Thank you. I expected that, of course, I'm not as important as a state secretary, but that's okay. I'm not disappointed by that. I'm not quite sure if Wirecard is known to everyone, and I'm also not quite sure if we would count as a FinTech in accordance with the study. If we count Wirecard, then it's probably not, it's FinTech 1.0 and probably not 2.0. But maybe let me explain a little bit about Wirecard. When I joined Wirecard 14 years ago, it was a small company of about 50, 60 people. Sitting in Munich, at the Munich airport, small, pure payment service provider. And in the last 14 years I worked for Wirecard. The company has grown tremendously. As you can see, we are more or less all around the world. We are publicly listed on the stock exchange, roughly about 5 billion euros in valuation. And we have an international client base. So in the end, what you see is it's possible to build something which is a worldwide player in Munich, in Germany. And maybe Munich is the right place for FinTechs. So maybe I can heat up the discussion around Berlin, Frankfurt, and Munich. No, I'm kidding. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. I think if we can make Germany interesting FinTech hub, of course, this is where we all will benefit from. So as you can see, and this is maybe something which is also different to others, we started as a technology company. But you can see we have licenses. And we have not only one license. As you can see, we have a German full banking license, which we passported into Europe. But we also have an e-money license. This is part of an acquisition, but it allows us also, of course, to use different license regimes and the flexibility or the different areas and possibilities in different markets. Where are we? I didn't use this slide to say more or less we are big, we are fat, we are everywhere. But maybe just one tip behind the slide. If you look at the slide, you will see we are present in a lot of markets and present in all regions around the world. But if you look at the history of Wirecard and how we moved around the world, and I think this is most important, is we moved along the clock. So we never focused on the US. You have seen we have a presence now in the US, but it was our latest acquisition which we have done. And why did we move not right away from Germany, UK, then directly to the US? It's quite simple. The US is the most challenging market from our perspective. It's a very large market, it's very homogeneous. And we, as we are living here in Germany, always build products for markets where we don't know how they will look like. We know Germany is too small, so we start developing solutions which are not only for Germany. We build in language capabilities, we build in different transaction currencies, so we try to cater with the flexibility which we need across Europe. And clearly, if you look into the Asian market, it's the same. And maybe it's a little bit more even what you need there, because in Europe, we have at least some form of standardization. So we have the EU, of course, driving the harmonization. And as Wirecard and I personally have seen PSD1 coming, PSD2 now upcoming, I have seen e-money legislation and regulation. So I have seen a lot of regulation coming into place, helping us to build a European market. In Asia, you don't have this. You have special requirements, you have on-site processing requirements, like in India, where you simply can't operate from a data center which is not in India. You need to keep customer data always in the country. In Europe, you can host and process more or less from everywhere in Europe. But in certain other markets around the world, not. So this is more or less the important thing, which I believe is important when you want to grow and internationalize. The other thing you see is, of course, we did a completely, probably different way. And maybe you have seen the presentation from Christian from Adjust this morning, who also more or less in 4 years scaled his business across the world. When you look at and he spoke about also the different phases we typically have within a startup. And typically the second phase is you are a little bit disappointed because everything is not working as it should be. When I joined Wirecard, it was more or less the same. So in fact, I shouldn't have joined it because it was not in the best state at this time. But I believed in the topic. I believed in that in the end, every company is going into the online channel. We will have retail there. We will have a lot of other services coming up in the online channel. And in the end, everyone needs payment. So it must be a growth market. And of course, it could have been that it is not Wirecard, but it's another company. But I believe that in the end, there is a huge market coming up. And this is clearly what we have seen with Wirecard, that this huge market came. It never grew more than 100%, but it constantly grew. So we typically see still a growth rate of 20 to 30% of all the markets, across all these markets. And it's also, of course, one of the reasons why we moved into Asia, because the growth rates we see in Europe, of course, are not as high as they have been in the past, but we see other regions around the world, of course, getting up. So Asia getting more into the online market, as well as then, of course, the next we will see is Africa. So that more and more people, of course, start using the mobile devices to make also transactions on them. So what has been one or the success factors around Wirecard? The first thing, and it's also something where I believe a lot of fintechs should look into, is we have an API-driven business platform. So I mean, everything what we do is we are simply giving out APIs. Yes, we do sometimes front-end development, we also do sometimes app development, but in the end, it's a completely API-driven platform. So meaning what we can do is we can more or less be integrated into more or less all the various different processes, platforms, if it's shopping platforms, shopping carts like Magento, Oxid, Hybris, whatever, we can be integrated into apps from insurance companies, from digital gaming companies. This is most important because they more or less bring us to the end consumer. We are not an end consumer brand. We are 1 year younger than PayPal. And I must admit, PayPal has a much bigger valuation than we have. But we're nevertheless, of course, on a good growth track and to support various different clients all around the world. And if you do online shopping, if you buy online, a book online, if you use My Taxi, you have used Wirecard. You don't know it, but we have processed the transaction for those type of clients. So the API platform, of course, helped us simply, of course, to expand, to get into other markets. But it's slightly different compared to what, for example, other companies. We need to always look into every single particular market, what is the payment behavior and payment culture in the market. Because payment is something which is part of our cultural habits. As you know, we Germans tend to use cash still, whereas in the UK, they are heavily card-oriented, and in every single market in Asia, it's different. Like with our partner in China, and we have already spoken about it, with Alipay, WeChat, we partner with them, we bring them to Europe, and clearly Chinese customers have a different way of pay than we have. So a thin open platform is of course also important. Innovation culture. We still do a lot of things where we don't have a business case when we start with them. If we would start, first of all, making business cases, talk them with controlling, then we probably wouldn't do anything anymore. Because there's, of course, sometimes you simply believe that something is happening, you have some form of vision. Also, some say if you have a vision, you should go to the doctor. But clearly, you need to see what is going on. You need to see the trends in the market, and you need to simply say, I need to go this way. And you need to invest going this way without, first of all, asking where is the business case. Because we sometimes have projects where you have 2 or 3 years before you really have a take-up on the platform. And before you really have volume. Or if you enter a market, it takes time to build up relationships, to get the first customers, get the first references, before you simply scale it up. Vertical integration. We started as a pure PSP, so simply technical routing of transactions, bridging between the internet and old-style technology. And I remember this, initially what we had was ISDN dial-in. Our system behaved to the banks like it would be an ISDN-based point of sale terminal to process the transaction. So it was really a dial-in, sending a card transaction, getting the response, closing the connection. Of course, nowadays all the banks have XML, HTTPS interfaces or other type of interfaces, but this is the way we started. Starting as a payment gateway, we moved down more or less and did more and more vertical integration. So we bought a banking license to become a Visa and MasterCard member, to become an acquirer. And we moved further down. So first of all, we used acquiring processing companies as service providers before we did an acquisition and became an own acquiring processor. And nowadays, we provide acquiring processing for roughly about 60 banks worldwide. And the advantage, of course, for us is, as a technology company, when you control the stack, you control the value proposition. If you always need to rely on third parties, which have, I don't know, release cycles of three releases per year, this is too slow. All our components are released every 3 weeks. We need to be faster, much more flexible, break down the systems into thin platforms. And I always sometimes see Wirecard as a little bit of Lego puzzle. You have various different components, a lot of different systems, and you simply plug them together using APIs. So every single team is working on a small single platform. And it's not one huge platform where you try to solve with 60 people at the same time problems, and then more or less on the left side is happening something which results in a problem on the right side. No, you have always a team responsible for the platform and for the development of the platform. So 4, 5 people, and that's it, and they just expose APIs. So meaning, and this is of course the model we also bring to the customers. We give them APIs. So in the end, what we do is, on the left side is from an acceptance perspective, we have the gateway, we build own products. But most important is not only products, we also have the licenses. So we understand, of course, what it means to operate and run licenses and deal with regulation, deal with the various different regulators, if it's in Germany, if it's in UK, as well as in France. So we are more or less, of course, talking with all the regulators across Europe. But you see also, of course, and this was very important, is the vertical expansion. So meaning we added more and more partners to the platform, technology partners, distribution partners, making sure we get the scale. We are 3,500, but if you take out our Indian operations, we are less than 3,000. And in Europe, we are about 500, 600, and the majority of that is development. We can't afford to have, I don't know, hundreds of salespeople running around and trying to find every single customer which we want to have. No, we use, of course, a lot of different partners and different channels. Sales partners, but also technology partners. Hybris, Magento, Oxid. So meaning a lot of these technology partners are in the end bringing the customers to us. And this is why we need this API-driven model. On the right side, you see the issuing. And this is something which we did, of course, after years. We started on the left side, and after years, we started more or less on the issuing side. So adding capabilities around managing cards, managing accounts, issuer cards, mobile payments. We are one of the partners of Apple Pay, for example, which is not in Germany yet. And if everyone asks when it will be in Germany, I don't know. But we are supporting them in UK as well as in France. So we have card programs running there. With Apple Pay. So meaning we have all these partners which we need where we do this vertical extension. And of course we use this not only for traditional retail clients, for Air Berlin, My Taxi, Redcoon, or other companies, but also of course we use this to support FinTechs. And there was a nice article last week in the Business Insider in UK, which was saying that more or less 50% of the UK hottest FinTechs are running on Wirecard, which is, of course, is a nice compliment. I wouldn't say it's 50%. But clearly what you see is, for example, in the UK, you have Curve, which is a commercial card program. You have Loot, which is one of the challenger banks. We support Monzo in UK. You also see, of course, number 26. And number 26, of course, as everyone knows, is now having an own banking license, which of course I can't complain about, that they don't use our banking license anymore, because what they do is in the end more or less doing the same strategy as we did. It's vertical integration. But starting right with, of course, obtaining a banking license, doing the vertical integration right away is, of course, which is very expensive. So meaning it's sometimes, of course, better approach to partner with someone who gives you the license, the platform, before you do start this vertical integration. So it's the same strategy as we had and still have. So you see payment, you see fund flow, you see Alipay, which we are bringing to Europe. So it's the Munich airport, for example, is completely equipped with Alipay acceptance by Wirecard, Pontum in Paris, Body Shop in London, and it's spreading all around more or less Europe. And Alipay is more or less put to the point of sale so that Chinese tourists can spend and use Alipay at the point of sale. And we already have seen that they spend more when they can use Alipay and not China Union Pay or other type of payments. And by the way, a lot of people don't know this, a Chinese tourist spends 3,000 euro on a trip for shopping, not for the travel itself, just for shopping. So it's a huge market, which we're opening up for Alipay. So RatePay, so meaning this is a selection of some of the FinTechs we support. Satoshi Pay, which is also somewhere around here, is someone, of course, which we support. We've worked with Visa Collab to support, together with Visa, of course, FinTechs with our technology, with our platform, and also, of course, with a license. Because we know that one of the problems is, as we have also seen in the panel discussion, is the sandbox. And also, what can I do? What am I allowed to do? And clearly, this is something where we consult and support FinTechs in understanding what is allowed and what is not allowed, and what is happening in the world of regulation, because it's constantly, of course, changing. We have MLD4, MLD5 coming up. We have PSD2 coming up, opening up threats, opening up opportunities. But you always need to look at this and understand what is happening there. And this is, of course, where we support and help FinTechs to start, to grow, and simply help them on their way to become maybe the next second very successful FinTech out of Germany, which is spanning the world. Thank you.
So, thank you so much for the presentation. Before we go to the panel, I have a couple of questions. So first of all, coming out of Munich, isn't that overly expensive? Isn't it hard to build a company up from there?
I would say probably London is more expensive. No, I don't think so. London, of course, Munich is not the cheapest city, probably the most expensive one in Germany. But we have a beautiful landscape. So I moved to Munich roughly about 20 years ago, and I must admit, I don't want to leave Munich. It's a nice place to live, it's a nice place to work, and I think it's also becoming more vibrant. So you see more and more companies, of course, also in Munich starting up, and this is where I believe it's a good place.
Yeah, so what does, for example, the government there do to boost also FinTechs, but other startups, because we all know about laptop and lederhosen, but does it actually also go beyond that?
I must admit I can't really answer this question. Because I'm typically not involved in political affairs, so it's not something I can really discuss. As we are not a FinTech, we don't need funding anymore. So, of course, we are looking into the regulatory environment. We speak, of course, also with the State Secretary and with all the other bodies. We, of course, make sure that Germany stays competitive in the European market. And it's good to hear, of course, that FinTech in Germany is growing, even faster than in UK. Because when I look, you have seen we have a lot of FinTechs from UK. Yeah. Maybe it's simply because they are a little bit ahead of time. But I believe that there is a lot of opportunities also in the German market, as well as beyond Germany, of course, France, UK, and all the other European markets.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
An applause, ladies and gentlemen, for